good. Check it out here. Videos. Hey everybody, I am just getting everything set up here. Just make sure I can read the questions and the like. There we are. Turning, muting the sound. There we go. That's all gone. Yep. There are the questions. I think the setting looks good. The lighting is good. The sound is good. So, welcome. Welcome everybody once again to Satsang, your Sunday afternoon self-exploration. And remember that this is self-discovery leading to self-realization. We're not here to collect new knowledge. We're here to have a direct experience of the self. So please, by all means, put in the chat hello and tell me where you are, where you're from. I'm gonna make sure the chat's actually working because I'm not seeing any here. Type chat 13. People are chatting. Oh, there they are. Good. Here it comes. Look and sound fine from Billy Boy. Thank you. And welcome back, GP. Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. The one time I knew I wasn't going to be here, I went out of town and actually went off grid. Took a very much needed bit of time off. That was just one of the best experiences of my whole life, if not the best. And then when I came back, there was just so much going on that I couldn't make it happen. So I'm really, really glad to be here, back here with you guys. I called this episode, if we want to call that, to just be. And I called it that because I wanted to bring our attention to the simple experience of being, which is so overlooked, and yet it's the heart and soul of genuine, non-dual spiritual inquiry. Because to just be is to be outside of the flow of thoughts, is to be outside of all conceptual knowledge. Eckhart Tolle likes to refer to it as presence or spaciousness. But it is simply the sense of your own existence. Now the mind doesn't like that. Let's be clear. The mind does not like that idea of just being, because when you are just being, there is no mind. It simply does not exist. And our inherent learned proclivity to always be engaging with something external, always trying to we'll really have an active thought pattern going, an active experience, makes just being seem to be empty. But if you are willing to just stay with it long enough, you find that it's not empty at all. In fact, it is the very source of all of the things and experiences and states that you have been searching for in the mind. It is actually the essence of who you are. So as we're getting started here, I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes for a second, to just let them close and bring your attention inside. If you want to start first by just focusing on your breath, it's a good place to start. If you've had experience with meditation before, if you haven't had experience, it's a very good place to start because it gives you something to put your attention on. if you have experience at meditation, then just go ahead and start with the breath and then begin to sink back more deeply. It starts with the breath, but then it starts becoming more and more and more subtle. So just notice the breath is there. Notice that there's a lot of thought. You may have an enormous amount of thought. It may be just this constant stream of thought. Don't try to stop it, but try to watch it. Watch how it operates. Watch how it arises and subsides. And then see if you could take a step back even further to recognize that no matter how many thoughts are there, how many few, that you are aware of them. There is something that is aware of them. It's as if in a very subtle place inside of us, we are watching everything we normally associate as our lives happening on a screen in front of you. Every thought is playing out in front of you. Every emotion is playing out in front of you. Every sensation you're having is being witnessed from this place. This is the place of your true being. This is you. This is consciousness. It really is that simple. Don't want to make it any more complicated because it doesn't need to be. This great place of awakening and enlightenment that people are seeking is this. The absolute everyday experience of simply being. And as you step back from that, let go of all the thoughts, past, present, future, all of them. And notice that you don't need any thoughts to be. You don't need any thoughts to have experiences. No matter what experience you might be having, it may be uncomfortable, there may be anxiety, there may be joy, there may be excitement. That no matter what the character of the content is, the one experiencing remains absolutely the same. Now, this isn't knowledge, is it? This isn't relative knowledge. This isn't something you learn from a book. This is your experience. You're sitting right in the middle of it. And genuine spiritual inquiry is that. It is a direct seeing into what's actually here. What you are actually experiencing. Free of all the interpretation and thoughts about it. Free from all the dogma and creeds and all the other stuff that has gotten laid on us over the years. That you're experiencing the essential experience of every human being, and the experience that is recognized by the sages is that of awakening. This is yourself. It is actually that simple. That which is aware of everything else. But that which is aware of everything else cannot see itself as an object. Because to see something as an object, you have to be standing apart from it. You cannot stand apart from yourself. And therefore, this is the great mystery. You cannot know yourself as an object. How you know yourself is simply this intuitive recognition. You are you not? This is a non-dual recognition because you're not recognizing it as something else. This is the problem with spiritual seeking when it is centered mostly or all in the mind, because the mind will always seek some kind of object. has to. The mind does not have the capacity to turn on itself. But consciousness does. Your true being does. Now, perhaps you've noticed as you've been doing that, that the thoughts have slowed down a bit. The idea that a meditation of any kind is a practice to get your mind to stop thoughts, is inaccurate. It is a practice of becoming aware of your actual self, aware of being aware, aware of consciousness. And that as you do that, thought, emotion, and sensation all begin to subside. Because they are only fed by your attention. If your attention's not on them, there's no energy to them. This is simply the practice of being. And it's not even really a practice, is it? It's a practice of retraining your attention to be able to focus, to withdraw its focus from external phenomena, and thus really just become absorbed back into the consciousness out of which your attention has come. The consciousness is what attention reports to. Even if your attention gets distracted, isn't it you who say, I was distracted? It simply means the attention went somewhere else unconsciously. But the moment you see it, that's the re-emerging, the reawakening of consciousness. That is what you are. The search for the self, right? The search for God. That's it. It can't get any simpler than that. That is what you actually are. That is the ultimate reality. We don't experience it more fully simply because we keep believing our minds, that keep looking for some object out there that's going, that's reality. No, you are reality. Is your experience of existing unreal? An illusion? It can't be. Even if everything you are experiencing is an illusion. Even if you're sound asleep in a bed on another planet and all of this is a dream you're having, there's a consciousness of that dream. The content can be illusory, but the consciousness experiencing the content cannot be. That is the ultimate, final reality. You. Consciousness. And so the mission of non-dual inquiry is to simply disassociate this pure consciousness from all of the objects of the mind. So that all of the identification with the content is broken, those associations are cut, and the self shines forth in its absolute pure reality. And then you find, of course, that it's been shining forth the entire time. So, you can open your eyes now, take a nice breath, move your body a little bit. It's a very simple, it is the simplest meditation. It is simply, it's Ramana Maharshi put it, go back the way you came. You're simply turning your attention back to the place from which everything has emerged. Everything has to start from consciousness. Everything has to appear in consciousness. And so the transformation that takes place is that we no longer identify ourselves with the content, with the body, with the mind, with beliefs, with associations, with memories, with the flow of events that we wrongly call our lives. And we only identify with that which is clearly real, the essence of you, that which has to be there in order to have any experience at all. Without that, you don't exist. So that's your essence. So let's go. Let's go to the list here. Carrie, hello, Carrie. Billy Boy, hey man. Dave Rose, welcome back. Dave from Massachusetts. Mark C. Hi, GP from Vermont. Hi there. Hi, Aaron from Kentucky. Wildcat Drums. Hi, GP. Hi. Ava, so good to see you. There's Ava, my buddy in Poland. Heron, hello, man. I'll never get your name. Heron. Um, Happy New Year, everybody, from Gouda, Netherlands. Good to have you here. Mark C. Good to reset, rest, and recharge. Yes, sir. David and Elaine, my good friends. Greetings from the south of England. Ursula, hi from Madeira Island. Sally Atherton, hi from southeast England. Glad to see you back. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Sue McIntosh, missed you, DP, but I'm loving your videos on the chakras. Sue here from South Africa. Wonderful. Glad you all are. I hope you're all getting those. If you're not on my mailing list, um, please get on it. You can go to gpwalsh.com/chakras-free. And I've got a whole bunch of videos that I'm doing about the chakras as archetypes, not as actual spinning vortexes of light, but as symbols, metaphors for important aspects of consciousness. And I'll be doing a free live workshop this Saturday, and then an intensive 10-week workshop following that. So hope you'll check that out. gpwalsh.com/chakras-free. Sarah, hi G, happy to see you. Love, Sarah from France. Hi, Sarah. Mary Sykes, hello GP from Niagara Falls. Hi. Sophie, hello dear GP. Hello, Sophie. Sophie, excuse me. Let's see. Ava says about chakras webinar. The link to chakras archetypes on YouTube announcement doesn't work as you intended. It's possible to register. It's impossible to register. Oh, really? Oh dear. Technology bites me again. I will get it fixed. I'll be darned. I may have messed up. Well, I clearly messed something up. Sophie is from Hereford. Hi, Sophie. Well, thank you for telling me, Ava. I registered from your letter, but people who are not on your mailing list are not able to register. Got it. You're absolutely right. I need to go in and change all of those. Oh, boy. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. I'll do it after Satsang. Happy Gilmore says, hello GP, is it true that without suffering you cannot awaken, or does awakening happen spontaneously regardless if you suffer or not? Does suffering have anything to do with it? It's a great question. And it's always yes and no. It is possible to awaken without suffering, but it's very rare. In fact, the only one I actually know who awoken without suffering was Steve Jourdain, who just got so absorbed in the question, I think, therefore I am. That was the portal through which he went all the way down and broke through to total awakening. Even Ramana Maharshi, who at the same age of 16, he was just filled with this incredible fear of death. And rather than running away for it, he dove into it. Okay, this is it. This is, I'm dying. I'm just going to completely be with this death. 16 years old, really amazing. For most of us, we tend to get complacent. We tend to kind of rest on our laurels, right? I know many people. A lot of my friends are luminaries in the personal development field, belong to an organization that is just nothing but the luminaries of the field. And most of them are stuck in their particular level. They got to a level, they got out of the victimhood, they got through a lot of stuff and got to a place where they were awake, they were very conscious, right? But things got easy and they didn't push to go all the way. Now sometimes that can be sustained for the rest of your life, and something will have to crash in the next life. But it does seem that life throws at us challenges. Now life isn't, saying picking you out and throwing a challenge at you. Life is just happening the way life happens. It becomes a problem or suffering when we run into our resistance to life, a part of us that is unwilling to accept things as they are and wants to go about changing them. That's suffering. Suffering is nothing other than being stuck in a position and therefore resisting. Right? The moment you're stuck, the moment you're not moving anymore, you stagnate and you start to die. That's what happens to everything, right? When the body can't refresh itself anymore, it dies. When a religion it becomes so dogmatic, it doesn't have any room for any new ideas to come in, it dies. Same thing with cultures, economic systems. Everything works like that. Everything has to be constantly renewed. And when we run into those experiences that we call suffering, it is the reminder that that we have become identified with the self. We're holding on to something. We're not willing. We're having an argument with reality, and that should be the clue to turn back inward. Once that inward journey is renewed, the suffering has served its purpose and it doesn't need to persist. It does not need to be held on to. But the fact of the matter is, if you do need, it's not an absolute, right? It is not an absolute that you have to suffer in order to awaken. But if you do need suffering, you in particular, you'll get it. Period. End of story. Because the most important thing and the most loving thing that life can do is to provide you with the circumstances that will wake you up. So again, it's not an absolute. It doesn't have to be that way. Most of the time it is, but the only real question is not in a general case, do you have to suffer to awaken? Do you have to suffer to awaken? Right? And the answer is most likely yes, you do. But you individually. But just remember that. If you get to the point where when you start to feel suffering, and suffering can be very subtle, it's discontent, it's restlessness, it's a very subtle anxiety. It is a resistance to simply being quiet, to not doing anything at all. It's a sense of having to be active. It can be a sense of feeling lonely or out of contact. There's all sorts of subtle ways in which suffering is into the picture. The more sensitive you are to those, the quicker your attention begins to withdraw back within again, and begin to discriminate where has my attention been going. My sense of identity being rooted has been associating itself, that I'm now experiencing a sense of discontent, or maybe a subtle sense of discontent, or maybe a big upset. So we don't want to invite it, right? Make me suffer, make me suffer. There's been lots of religious traditions that have done that. There's no need. Life will provide you plenty, right? There's no need to seek out any more. So the question is really living with today. Rather than thinking of it in general terms, do I have to suffer? It's like, am I suffering now? Am I stuck somewhere now? Am I resisting things in my life right now? Is there any place in my life right now that I don't feel comfortable? It's not the way I like it. I'm hoping it's going to get better. Those are the places to look for. Now, when I say something like that, it doesn't mean you're supposed to stagnate. It doesn't mean you're not supposed to make plans to evolve and grow, right? But that all the evolution that we go through, all of the growth, all of the goals we have, the ambitions we have, the aspirations we have, should never be so much should never have projected on them the idea that they will make you happy, and therefore you overlook the discontent of this moment and your attention gets put on the future. That's suffering. So it is, okay, what if I don't get that? Can I be happy? What if my life never changes again? Can I totally allow that? If the answer is yes, you are free. If the answer is no, you have attached yourself to some state or condition or relationship or experience in order to be happy, which means you've cut yourself off from the innate happiness, which is your nature. Just go back and do the meditation I started this with. Go back to the being that is unassociated with anything, and you will find that perfect stillness. Your actual being is not discontent. Discontentment is a veil created by the egoic mind, laying on top of the beingness that is perceiving it. You are not that. So don't believe any thought that says, my happiness is out there somewhere later. It's not true. And that's all you have to let go of, is the untrue. You don't have to gain the true. What you are does not have to be gained. What you aren't has to be peeled away. Like Michelangelo said about the statue of David. He saw David in the marble. He chipped away everything that did not look like David. That's what you're doing too. Does that answer it for you? Happy? Bo something. Bo. Hey, GP. Hey, G. Greetings from covered with snow. Kelowna, BC. Hey, Bo. Sally says, hey, hi. I recently returned from Tiruvannamalai. I have a hard time pronouncing that. In India, there are a lot of devotees there who worship Hindu gods in temples. Yes. Does the devotional path bhakti lead to oneness, non-duality? Beautiful question, Sally. The answer is yes. But here's what has to happen. Usually it requires the bhakti path, the path of devotion, to eventually question the truth of the one who is devoted. The devotional path, there's two. There's me, and then there's the God that I am devoted to. And that could be Shiva, that could be Krishna, that could be Jesus, right? It doesn't matter what the particular deity is, right? Because the deity is completely within the heart of the devotee. So the devotee is worshiping that. Now, that worship in the bhakti path is in the West is very different. It means I'm obeying certain rules, I believe certain things. They are not seeking an absolute oneness with the God. You can't have oneness with the gods of the West. Yahweh does not have oneness. It's always a relationship. And so that relationship is sustained by your beliefs, your behaviors, what you've accepted and what you haven't. Bhakti, the devotional path in India, is very different. I am seeking to completely merge into the God. Meaning, I'm going to disappear. There comes a time, as the devotees doing everything they needed to do, they're surrendering every thought, every feeling, every ambition, everything to their God. And at some point, it becomes clear that the separation between the final surrender is themselves, so that there is nothing but God left. I don't know of any occurrences where a bhakti has ever done that. The only ones I know is the bhakti who has taken up Vedanta, has taken up self-inquiry. There were many who went to Ramana Maharshi. And that completed for them that last step so that they could actually completely see through the eye that was seeking devotion to see that the object of the devotion was in fact their very selves, that the separation had always been illusory, that there was never anything to be devoted to. Interestingly enough, somebody on the Vedantic path, somebody who's doing this kind of non-dual self-inquiry, needs to have that same kind of devotion. One of the problems with Advaita in the West is that it has become too heady, it's become too intellectual, and the heart is not engaged very little, if at all. There's a point of which there is a sense of surrender. And I find in my own practice and my own experience that it's been this kind of flow between the two. That there have been times, especially early on, when I just didn't, I was just so exasperated. It was just like, help, please. And something in me let go. Little by little, the wisdom began to dawn, and that separation became thinner and thinner. But it's the discovery that you are the object of your devotion, but that you that is the object of the devotion is not the egoic mind. In other words, you disappear, and the only thing left is the God. But now the God is not form. It becomes formless. It transcends all. God, it is the absolute sense of being, and you are one with it. So God is all there is, as the mystic priest would pray, Lord, replace me with you. It's a beautiful prayer. It kind of captures the essence of it. Does that answer your question, Sally? Mary says, when I'm in that place of myself, I see that there are no beliefs and no religious dogma. Yes, there aren't. Those are all imaginary stuff. They're made up. It's conditioning. It's culture. It's just stuff that's happening. When you get to that place of being, there's no beliefs. There's no gender. There's no form anymore, right? You're not male or female. You're not white, black, or Asian. You're not young. You're not old. You're not smart. You have transcended the pairs of opposites that are this world. Transcended doesn't mean they go away. It simply means you are no longer stuck in one side or the other. It's all just the play of opposites, and the play of opposites is what we experience of life. You see, there's no belief because there's no identity anymore. People identify themselves with their beliefs. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Baptist, right? It can be I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Hindu. I'm a Jain. It can be any of those things. They're just belief patterns that you now identify with, and now I become one of those. But you see, in that place of being, there are no beliefs there. There's no dogma. There's no rules. There's just pure, spacious presence. That's being. Everything else flows from that. That is the essence of you. That's what needs to be seen. That's where your sense of I needs to come back to. That's you, right? That's you completely disassociated with any thought, any concept, any belief, any idea, any form. And what's left is pure, formless, conscious awareness. Your being, reality, the truth. A million names for it. The great I am. Right? So, let's see. I think I got that one. Got that one. Hello from Bulgaria. Very nice to see you again. Hi, Ivan. Good to see you. Pioneer Polly. Hey, Pioneer Polly. Good to see you. Brock. Hi, Brock from Palm Springs. Hello, Brock. Dorothy Sanya. Hello, GP from Maryland. Hello, Dorothy. Eli. Hello, sir. Hello to you. Vancouver Island, Canada is where Pioneer Polly is. Wonderful. Fantastic. I'm going to be there in July doing a live retreat at the Krishnamurti Education Center of Canada. I think it's the weekend of the 23rd of July. So all my Canadian folks, I hope I'll be providing links and stuff to register for it. It's wonderful. I'm doing it really as a volunteer. Uh, it's it's a nonprofit, so it's very inexpensive. I think it's like $200-300 for all 3 days, and that includes meals and a place to stay. Um, so it'll be a really nice retreat. So hello from Australia, from Meryl. Meryl, hello. Anja from Germany, hello Anja. And Kaufman, how much longer will we be able to download IR before loose for the current site? It'll probably be at least the end of February. I'm also gonna, as soon as I get the chakra course squared away, I'm going to be making some zip files of all the stuff to be able to download the audios. But IR is going to be available on the new site, so you don't have to worry about downloading those. Those are all being moved over onto the new platform, so don't worry about losing them. David Allain, even on a subtle level, is the belief in a separate self a form of narcissism and therefore pathological, as it is the root cause of suffering? But from the perspective of consciousness, it is part of oneness, as labels belong to the relative world. Um, well, the ego can, every ego is a bit narcissistic, some more than others. You know, the narcissism, it's interesting that there's actually two completely opposite interpretations of the that story of Narcissus, not Narcissus. What was his name? Narcissus? I think it was Narcissist. Yep. Falling in love with his own reflection in the water. That's where it comes from. And psychology coined that, used that as a term for the negative aspect of that, which is, and my mother was pathologically narcissistic. She could not see any point of view but her own. That was a big part of her mental illness. And so there was just nothing else existed, which of course makes somebody, they can also become sociopathic because they can't empathize with anybody else. No matter what happens, the only interpretation of it is how it affects me. That's their truth. And so that's a very extreme form of it. The other interpretation of narcissist is that it represents him falling in love with his true self, and he gets completely absorbed inwardly. Now that's not narcissism. That's meditation. That is meditation on being. And as I've been talking about the sense of being that I've mentioned and started with the meditation, that's it. That is the place in which the reflections are seen. That is, it is that which is witnessing the reflection. A complete absorption into the self. The exact opposite of that would be the absorption into the false self. Now, everything is consciousness, right? Nothing could exist outside of consciousness, including the sense of a separate self. Now, the sense of a separate self is just a sense. It is a collection of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that have taken a particular pattern. That pattern has had projected on it a sense of its own being. That is, consciousness, which does exist, projects its existence on what is nothing but an insentient, mindless functioning. It's the same as if there was a sophisticated robot that was interacting with you that could imitate a human being, and you would project upon them a sentience that they don't actually have. The body is not sentient. What we think of as the body sensing and all that is consciousness. So all the forms that consciousness takes, whether it be a sage or the totally deluded, are simply elements arising in consciousness. So the sense of a separate self is consciousness. It does not limit consciousness. The, the belief we have is that I am stuck in it, but that's just a belief. Consciousness is not stuck there. You are not stuck in the separate self. And it only takes a little bit of scrutiny to see, to dismantle, to deconstruct the separate self and see that it is nothing but a bunch of piece parts that are functioning in a particular form, and we have given that form the status of a self. There is no separate self. It does not exist except as a belief. So I believe there's this ego that is operating in me, and somehow it's tripping me up. There's no such thing. It does not exist. There is only patterns of thought, emotion, and sensation. And consciousness associates, projects its own selfhood onto those, and suddenly it appears as there's this entity operating inside of me. There's no entity. There's nothing there. It is consciousness, but it's a very constrained, constricted form of consciousness. It's consciousness imagining it to be this little struggling mass of pain and suffering. Right? Become liberated from that. And how you become liberated from that? You get in touch with true being. You deconstruct. See that that separate self does not exist. It never has and it never will. And then begin to live from the point of view of the true self. That's how it's done. You have to examine until you find who you are. And the easiest way to do it, I mean, the way Ramana Maharshi recommended it, no matter what experience you have, whether it be the experience of a separate self, the ego arising, all sorts of reactions, thoughts that are uncontrollable, self-deprecating, horrible thoughts, terrible feelings, to simply ask a simple question: to whom are these thoughts or feelings or experiences arising? Who is seeing them? And immediately you've stepped outside. And what that question does, if you really take it seriously, is it has taken the almost our hypnotic obsession with the thoughts and has turned it back towards you, the one experiencing the thoughts. Now, the habit's so strong to be constantly drawn back out into the thoughts. So instead, just go, no, to whom are they arising? Who's seeing these thoughts? So now the attention has gone off the object and onto the subject. I'm having these thoughts. It's all about the thoughts. Wait a minute. Thoughts having I. I. Who's the I that's having the thoughts? And that's where the next question goes is, okay, they're arising to me. I'm seeing those thoughts. Who am I? Who is the I? I know the thoughts. I know the experiences. I know the verbs of having and wanting and doing. Who's the I? And when you ask that question, the mind will present pictures of you, present memories and all sorts of stuff. Wait a minute. That thought of I, that thought that says, when I ask the question, this I, this, who am I? This thought comes up. But wait, to whom is that thought appearing? To me. Okay? Who am I? And the process is getting more and more into the I without any external associations. The I in reference to nothing else other than itself. It's completely and totally self-referenced, self-luminous. And that's, you dismantle the sense of a separate self, because it is nothing but a collection of thoughts. To whom do those thoughts of a separate self arise? not to the separate self. Is that clear, folks? Stephen Elaine, yes. Is that clear? Yeah. As labels belong to the relative world. Yes. Yeah. And we need them because otherwise we couldn't be doing this. Um, so we need to be able to speak, but of course you can get wrapped up in the words, and the words are abstractions, and the words can be misleading. So, which is why I use 1,000 different words and different ways of pointing, so we can go beyond the words to the meaning of the words, and that meaning becomes the direct pointer into the absolute. Mary Sykes says, "Do we not become complacent because we do not know any better?" Yeah, yeah, pretty much. We become complacent when things are good enough. Let's put it that way, right? And that happens, right? If somebody can get to the point spiritually where they're pretty much not suffering, they're not triggered anymore, but they're not fully awake yet. They're not fully free, and and so it is always some kind of ignorance of not knowing any better that makes us settle before the grand prize. Right? Don't settle until you're done, till the complete goal is reached and you know yourself as the infinite. Do not stop until then. Don't be content if you get to the point, because people sometimes get to the point, and there are famous people who are like this, right, in the self-help movement. Wayne Dyer was one of them, and I can say it now because he's not with us anymore, who could manifest anything he wanted whenever he wanted. There was no restrictions on that anymore. But he was not awake. He got stuck there. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have been criticizing one of the, you know. Oh well, too late. Cannot say it. It is at every level one has to be vigilant. Right? You can become complacent. And if you get to a point where you do have that kind of level of mastery, um, it may take some extra kick in the butt to remind you that you're not at full freedom yet. And don't stop until you get there. Don't settle for heaven. At Buddha's enlightenment, when all the beings came from the three hells and the three heavens came to hear the Dharma from him and to celebrate the wheel of the Dharma had turned again. Even the heavenly beings, the demigods, came to hear this, because you can get stuck there too. Don't get stuck in heaven. Right? Don't 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 stop until you are at total reality, the absolute, nothing short of that. And yes, we don't know any better. And hey, if you struggled a lot in your life and all of a sudden you're in a place where you're not struggling anymore, yeah, you're going to enjoy it for a while, right? But let wisdom remind you that this is just a break. It's a respite on the road. It's not the end of the road. This is not the whole point. So thank you for that, Mary. Rosario, thank you, GP, for the beautiful meditation we started with. Good. Glad you liked it. I'm glad you like it. I really like that one. It's kind of my go-to one to just get into that place of pure being. There's no thought there. There's no beliefs. There's no me there. There's no separate self. I am simply there. I am, but not as anything. Very nice looking couch. Thank you. Thank you. I really like the symmetrical background, Ivan says. It's calming. Oh, good. Glad you guys like it. Yeah, I'm always experimenting with the background here because this is where I do all my videos. And I like the couch, and I've got some others I'm doing with the chair and using it as a backdrop. But it's it's a very comfy couch. Actually, I sit on it a lot. Thanks, Eli. October Paul. I did come to a full recognition of oneness, but I still suffer. How can I be enlightened and still experience sadness, anger, frustration, fear, and hurt? Great, great question. Okay. You got a little bit more to go, Paul. You're awake. That's clear. I can feel it. Okay? Now, we want to deepen this, right? Till there's nothing left that isn't awake, right? Who is it that awakes? Paul, October Paul, did not awaken. Awakening awoke from the dream of October Paul. Take it further. There's no awakened being. There's only awakening. You say, I still suffer. Who is suffering? Take it apart. Don't take it on face value. Right? Well, I'm suffering. Okay, hold on a second. Slow down. What we call suffering is what? There's things happening in the world around us, right? There's thoughts, feelings, sensations, events, experiences that are being had. And then there's a reaction to them, right? Like, I have a, I feel this anxiety. I shouldn't be feeling that, right? I'm awake. Why am I still feeling this, okay? Just take another step back. To whom is that feeling uh, arising to? Who's seeing that? And also the thought and feeling, this shouldn't be here. Why am I still experiencing this? Who's witnessing that thought? And is that one that is witnessing it, is that suffering? Or is the suffering in the thoughts? In that remnant of the sense of a separate self? Who am I? Can the self suffer? If so, suffering is eternal. If not, there has to be an end to it. This is one of the key teachings of the Buddha. There is an end to it. And what's that end? Seeing it for what it actually is. And who is actually suffering? So simply sink more deeply into it. Also, on this path, the way I teach it, and the way a few others, not many, but a few others, others teach it, it's twofold. Believe me, early on I had exactly this kind of experiences. On one hand, I'm just completely walking on water, just constantly inspired, constantly in conversation with God, an enormous amount of suffering and conflict going on in my life. I could not reconcile the two of those. But it eventually became clear to me that the awakening, which I did experience, and I doubted it. Well, I must not have it, right? I couldn't possibly be awake if I still got all this stuff going. I simply did not understand that while the awakening will start in a place where it's clear insight, it's absolute. You're one. I am one with everything. But there's a whole world here of energetic patterns, lifetimes of energetic patterns that are still in play, right? And they're going to start popping up. The more awake you get, the more they come, and with the more force that they come. The ultimate awakening, and this is what Buddha talked about, this is what Ramana Maharshi was talking about, is when all of the tendencies from every lifetime have finally been burnt up. In Sanskrit, they're referred to as the vasanas. In Buddhism, they refer to that as the repository consciousness. It is this very subtle layer of conditioning and identification that isn't in the mind, but is in the whole world around you. So what you're doing is you're bringing your awakening into this world. You're coming back down the mountain into this world. So it's going simply from the inside, which is where it starts, and don't doubt it. You are awake, right? And now it's got to start moving in to you start, so that same awakeness now begins to liberate the emotions, the feelings. So you now start feeling that sense of oneness. And eventually, as it permeates more and more of the system, that will become the place from which you live it. And then you're the sage. The sage is not somebody who has wisdom. The sage is wisdom appearing in human form. That's what an avatar is. That's what Christ was, the Word made flesh. So your awakening is simply moving in to the entire world. And your body, the body, your emotions are not just yours, right? It is literally coming down from the mountain. And so to examine this question of who is it that's actually suffering, you'll find that you cannot find the sufferer. Only resistant thoughts, resistant feelings, the idea that things should be different than they are. And just stand back and go, to whom are those appearing? Well, to me. Well, who am I? Am I this sufferer? I've looked, I can't find a sufferer, only suffering thoughts. So if I'm sitting back here in these suffering thoughts, if I don't engage with them, where do they go? Poof, they have to dissolve. Because I sustain them. My belief in them, my indulgence of them, my fear of them, all sustains them. I withdraw that, and where do they go? Poof, they've got nowhere to go. And now you sit as you actually are. To quote Nisargadatta, beautiful quote, uh, I leave my human life to fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. Go to your being and stay there. The thought comes, I'm suffering. Don't believe it. It's just a thought. The self cannot suffer. And the self is what you are. So suffering has never, ever been real. It has always been an appearance. And you are real. So take this in. The reality is you have never suffered. You've never been asleep. You've never been unenlightened. You've never been unrealized. It has to be that way, because if you could, it would mean it would have to come and go like everything else, which means if you are, oh, to be awakened means you must have always been awakened. Don't let your mind tell you anything else. Mary, was religious indoctrination done for mere control only? No. It always ends up like that, unfortunately. But no, that's not where it starts. I think what happens is, the process is that somebody has the direct experience. Somebody says, it falls away and they emerge. Now, if that happens and you're in a place like India, which has had a huge tradition of that, it's like, oh, yay, well, build him an ashram. And, people will come, bring oranges and grapes and stuff. And right? um, but in our culture, that happens, right? And in many cultures around the world, the direct insight, which is also the mystic, right? The one who trusts his own authority and his own direct experience over whatever the popular dogma is, uh, the going dogma of the day, um, they run into resistance. Um, Sometimes it's so powerful it will permeate and make a transformation happen within that culture. Um, then what happens is the followers, right, over time have less and less direct contact with the experience that the originator had, that led to the shedding of the sharing of that experience. That's why people like Buddha and Christ never wrote anything down. Why? They were it. You want to know it? You come. You be in that presence and you imbibe it. The disciples of Jesus didn't write anything down. It was actually a generation or two later. I think the earliest one we have some scraps from is like 90 years after his crucifixion, right? So we're talking a long, 90 years before anything was ever written down. So it's not, I mean, it's kind of like the world's longest game of telephone, right? You know that game where you, somebody tells you something and you whisper it to somebody else, whisper it, and you take it around, 20 people and hear what the story sounds like at the end. It starts to become methods of attaining that level of insight rather than the insight as direct transmission itself. And the further away you get from the origin of it, the more it becomes doctrinal, the more it becomes sutras, the more it becomes scriptures, right? And then every now and then somebody comes along who has an insight and can now reinterpret those things for you. Those are also called mystics, they're sages, right? And then oftentimes that same doctrine gets mixed up with politics and culture and economics and all the mindless stuff that the world operates on, and before you know it, you have religious dogma. You have to believe this way or else. I mean, Christianity is the biggest example of that, simply because it was consciously created to be indoctrinating, right? They just chose what they were going to put together to create this doctrine that was the Roman Empire's way of managing an enormous empire spread all over the place, and they simply didn't have enough police to police it all. So they devised a brilliant way of you control people's minds. We're experiencing it right now. Look, we have 6 companies that own all the news outlets. We're experiencing that same level of indoctrinated control, and the Romans did it best. They did it first. They did it best. They did it so well that the church, that was the form of that indoctrination, has lasted 1,300 years longer than the empire did. Um, so that's what it happens. All of it starts with grains of truth. That's why you can find beautiful, incredibly powerful grains of truth in the Bible, but you got to look for them because they've been completely covered over. You can find it everywhere. I think the only religion that hasn't happened to or minimally has been Buddhism. It seems to be very true to the original, and it certainly has produced more enlightened beings than any other tradition. So they did something right in the way they approached that. So I hope that answers your question. The most important thing is, don't you get indoctrinated. So let's see. Um, let's see. I find guilt comes in. Mary, again, let's see. I find that guilt comes in when letting go of some beliefs, as there is fear of doing something wrong, which itself has to be another thought, correct? Yes, it is. And a feeling and a reactive pattern. Let me make sure I get the rest of this. So, like my friend said today, we are covering our true self, which we can liken to a banana with the skin of the banana. All I have to do is peel away the skin. Yes. So yes, I agree with you about Wayne Dyer. I still loved him. I did too. I did. It was Wayne Dyer who introduced me to Nisargadatta. He had a little quote in the book, and it just stuck with me until I ran across I Am That, which was my introduction to the whole Vedantic tradition, which I had no idea about before that. So I'm very grateful to him for that. So anyway, what happens is that, yes, when letting go of fear, there's a fear of doing something wrong. Correct. Beliefs, including the belief of a separate self, gets associated with the actual survival mechanism and fear response in the body. So the natural fear response is, if I'm threatened, I'm going to fight or flee, right? Fighting, if I'm going to fight, it means anger. That's what anger is. It's the body physiologically getting ready to defend itself. Fear is the body getting ready to run, to hightail it, to try to flee from the danger. Okay. Now that was That came about in a world where the danger was a real danger, a physical danger. There was a predator, there was a snake, a big snake, right? And there was a lion or something. So the fear was imminent, it was detected, the action took place, the additional energy, you either, got caught and it was over, or you got away, and the body had ways of discharging that energy after the fact, and you just go back to, doing what you're doing, hunting, gathering, doing your thing. Right? Now, as our consciousness evolved, as we came psychologically and more mind, now that same trigger, which was always responding to what was actually happening in the moment, is now responding to our thoughts about what is happening. So we feel a threat to our ego, our belief systems, our identifications. We feel that as an actual fear in our body. And there's no real fear. There's nothing to fear. So when you are letting go of some belief, right, what you're really doing is letting go of, of who you thought you were, because we're identified with those beliefs. That's going to create a sense of fear. So go into that sense of fear of doing something wrong. Feel it. Recognize that it is a reactive pattern. Am I actually doing something wrong? Feel into it. Right? Is letting go of what is clearly a false belief doing something wrong? No. What am I feeling then? And now you be present consciously with that feeling. Right? And of course you can even go, to whom is that feeling appearing to? Me. And now there's you, distance, and a feeling running through the nervous system. And if that energy running through the nervous system does not have any story to hold it, it will dissipate. It can't help it. But if you start going, oh, should I really let go of that? Maybe I shouldn't. Boom, it's there, right? So really examine it, deconstruct it, take it apart, see it for what it actually is. An empty, insentient pattern running through the system that got put into place a long time ago when you were not conscious, and that it is no longer valid, the story is no longer valid, and you just be present with it long enough for it to just go, because it will. Does that help? We are covering our true self. Yes, we are veiling our true self. But I just want to take the opportunity to say, who's witnessing the veiling of that self? We couldn't sit here and talk about the veiling of the self if there wasn't something outside of the veiling watching the veiling take place. The true you has never been veiled. The true you has been watching the entire play the entire time. Can you see that? The consciousness, the place I brought you to in the meditation, which is completely open and spacious and free of any thought or an identification, has always been witnessing all of this. So somebody focusing on the peel instead of the banana is being witnessed, isn't it? The whole thing is appearing to who? To you. Who are you? You are the awakened one. That's what the word Buddha means. It does not mean one who has awakened. It means the awakened one. The one has awakened to itself. Are you following that? You are that one. You're not the one with the veil. Notice, the entire scene is being perceived. If you were the veil, you couldn't be seeing it. You couldn't be standing here looking at it. Oh, am I making this clear? This is the direct path. Right? There's no intermediate space here. There's no need to pass go and collect $200. Mm. Thanks for your very clear answer, GPs, Dave and Elaine. Also, interesting to reflect on your more positive interpretation of narcissist falling in love with his own reflection. I just ran across that. I think it was in Joseph Campbell, where he talked about it. And I said, yeah, well, of course, that would be the that would be the that would be the other way of looking at it. This complete absorption into the self, but not the egoic self, right? And matter of fact, it is even perfect. Total, total absorption into the personal sense of self would be narcissism, total delusion, right? And total absorption into the true self would be awakening, enlightenment. Beautiful. Ava says, to whom thoughts and emotions and all experience arise? Thank you for this answer. So simple. Only it has to be remembered. It's often forgotten in the midst of experience. I'm going to write this paper and hang it on the wall. Good. That's a good way to do it. That's a very good way to do it. And I'm going to switch legs here because this one's... Notice I can't do the full lotus thing. Never could. Always wanted to. Always wanted to be one of those limber yogis, right? Yeah, not for this. Not for this Irish body. Ain't going to happen. All right. Let's see. Yes. Thank you. It is often forgotten in the midst of experience. Ponder this statement from Muji, which I really love. When you're thinking about it, I have to remember that. And of course you do. On a practical level, whenever it comes to you, you go, ah, yes, and stop right then. And whatever you happen to be experiencing, whether it be wonderful or horrible, just go, to whom is this arising? And boom, immediately you're there. And Muji put it this way. It's really beautiful. He said, I am, before the idea that I could forget or the idea I needed to remember was believed. Remember, it's all the belief. The belief is presenting an image of you to you, of one who has been separated, trying to reconnect, and forgets their true self. It's not true. It's a belief. There is no such person. That too, the one who says, I have to remember that, is being perceived. Is it not? Is that not a thought that says, I have to remember that? Well, who's that I? To whom is that I appearing? Well, to me. Well, then I am not that I. I am this. Who am I? The one perceiving it. So that thought, I have to remember it, is not true. And you've really dismantled the whole picture. You following that? Subtle, isn't it? Right? Because our everyday experience is, oh, I forgot, and now I'm remembering. But we can get caught in that web of thinking of ourselves as someone who could forget and then had to remember. Well, that's a belief. Who is that I? That is just a thought. To whom is that thought appearing? And is the one to whom that appearing, have they forgotten anything? Did they not witness the entire thing? Did they not witness the forgetting and the remembering? So you can neither forget nor remember. No need for anything. You are the fully aware witness right now in this moment. You've never not been awake. You have a good idea, says Anjay. Yes. But write the paper and put it on the wall anyway. It's okay. It's okay. I just want to try to take it deeper. October Paul, thank you so much, G. Masterfully answered. It's nice to know I'm on the right track. You are indeed, my friend. Yeah. It's just, There's just more to it than we realize. Way more to it than we realize. Simply because we don't want to stop till we're all the way there. And this is to be felt, not just thought. And it's, for most people, it's usually the the experience of an insight, of an awakened mind, or I should say, the awakening appears as just this clarity, right? Which will also be felt then in the energy system. You'll feel it. Oftentimes, or people have a relief. They will cry. They will laugh. Suddenly, it's like suddenly this relief is off their shoulders. But that is not necessarily the end of things coming up. And to become completely equanimous with those things coming up, lovingly accepting it, realizing that what you are doing is the bodhisattva vow. You are alleviating the suffering of the world. It's not just yours anymore. And that will help, it'll deepen the entire thing until there's, you see, there never was any sufferer. There never was a world. There never was this incarnation. That it's always been, and you've always been that one true self. Alan just says, thanks for this question, for the question, October P. Mary Sykes. So I asked my friend listening via telephone with me now, if we have fears around having repetitive negative thoughts, that this will keep them coming. Not necessarily, right? Because that actually makes you afraid of having the thought about recurring thoughts, right? And it really is just a catch-22, right? So don't need to go there at all. Instead, just question the thoughts, right? Thought is repetitive, right? The psychology, very early studies in psychology have shown that thoughts are repetitive. Thoughts take a form, and they stay in that form, right? Until consciousness recognizes them, takes away the center around which they are orbiting, and the form begins to disappear. You don't have to be afraid of recurring thoughts, because that's what happens. Just take the thought and say, is it true, right? Take it apart, right? Or just say, to whom is this thought appearing? Whether it's the same thought or the same thought 1,000 times is irrelevant. To whom is that appearing takes you out of it. It doesn't matter whether it appears 1,000 times, right? Or is repetitive. And most thought is, right? So simply, is it true? Whatever this thought that is appearing, is it true? What's it saying? It's saying, I don't have enough. I'm lonely. And you say, okay, stop. Who's the I that it's referring to? I am lonely. Okay, what is that? There's a feeling there. Say there's a feeling of loneliness. And then there's a thought that says, I am lonely. And then there's something else behind those, seeing both the thought and the feeling. Right. So that thought I isn't referring to the true self. It can't be. The true self doesn't feel lonely. So that I is referring to the false sense of self. So just put it to the side and put your attention on the feeling that has caused the thought to arise, I am lonely. And you realize that the feeling triggered a conditioned response saying, I'm lonely, I got to do something about it, or I'm going to join Match.com or something, right? And just recognize that reaction of thought and feeling, and maybe even action, was an arbitrary conditioned pattern. And your attention goes back now just to the thought, just to the feeling, without a story. And every feeling that is not sustained by a story will simply, it can be uncomfortable, but eventually it will dissolve. Now you can also take it to the next level and go, to whom is this feeling appearing to me. Who am I? Who is the I that is the witness of this feeling? And now you don't even care about the feeling anymore, right? Because your attention is now completely on the subject. You've turned completely inside to know yourself, right? We all know the things that are out there. You know, talk about your car, talk about all these things. I want this, I want that, I love this, I hate that. Everybody can talk all day about the object of that want or that love or that hate or that fear. But then you ask, yeah, but who are you? The one having that. Well, I'm me. Who else? No, wait, stop. Who is the actual subject that's experiencing the feeling of wanting or fearing or hating or loving? Who's the I? We don't know. And that's why turning your attention towards that, the pure subjective experience of I, without mixing it with anything else, without mixing it with the objects that we're seeking, opens up the space for self-realization. Oh, this is what I am. Just me, without any of this. And then, lo and behold, you discover you don't need anything at all. You have absolutely everything you are everything you've been seeking. Let's answer it for you, Mary. October Paul, you're welcome. Anja says, thank you. Lisa, hi, happy 2020. Happy 2020, everybody. Mary Sykes says, yes, Christianity has done a big number on my psychology, as it has on millions, hundreds of millions. And it's the worst ever. I mean, the modern fundamentalist preachers, the TV guys, it's horrific. It's the Antichrist. That is the Antichrist. It is the exact opposite of the teachings of Christ. It is is the tool of tyranny and of empire. It has nothing to do with Christ anymore. Inner Aesthetics. Hi, GP. Hope all is well. Could you speak to spiritual growth and feeling of backstepping? A case of taking 5 steps forward and 4 steps back. It's just a feeling, right? And I'll describe to you exactly what's happening that your mind is interpreting as you taking steps back. There's a sense of openness or spaciousness, of expansion, moments of insight and clarity. You feel awake. Oh my God, I get this. I understand it, right? And you do. And then that awakening, sitting there, may trigger the mind now trying to take ownership of it. And suddenly it'll create all sorts of confusion and stuff in your mind and then tell you you didn't get it. Or maybe it'll be a feeling that comes up, fear, an intense desire, or just a sense of anxiety or something. And the thoughts will be, you didn't really get it, did you? Yeah, 5 steps forward, 4 steps back. You made a little progress, but you're not really there. None of that is true. You cannot take 5 steps forward and go backwards. Every step gained in awakening cannot be lost. The mind will tell you that it can, and it will present a picture to you of this confused being. Let me ask you a simple question. Who is witnessing this confused mind? And is that mind confused? That's not a mind. Is that confused? The thought that says, take 5 steps forward, 4 steps back, to whom is that arising? Who is seeing that? Is that taking steps forward and back? Or has it always been at the place that the mind keeps telling you you're trying to take steps to? That which you're looking for is where you are looking from. St. Francis of Assisi said that. An enlightened monk. They did happen in the church. Rarely, but they did happen. Right. So, question that inner aesthetics. Question it. Wait a minute. This is a belief that I am putting on myself. Is it actually true? How do I know that it's true? Well, I have to know me first. So, who is this thought arising to? Well, that's me. Clearly, that's me. Right? So, forget the thought now and put all the attention on, well, who am I that's experiencing this thought? Put all your attention on the subject of that sentence rather than on the objects of that sentence, and know who you are. Now, that has never taken a step anywhere. If I asked you, could you get up now and walk over to yourself? You go, huh? You can't. Right? So all of this are plays going on in the mind. And the mind has a picture of you striving to get to a goal, that goal being awakening or enlightenment, whatever, right? Whatever you call it. Is that picture actually true? What is this destination you're trying to get to? Isn't the place you're trying to get to the place you are witnessing the entire thing from already? So it is simply the mind telling you you're not what you're seeking, that you are not awake, that you are not consciousness, that you are something else. And someday, if you're really good and keep walking and keep getting up after you get knocked down, that eventually you'll get there and you'll be what you've always been. It's a realization that you've always been that. It's not an attainment of anything. It's a realization. The personal realization of Buddha knowledge. You are the Buddha. You are the awakened one. That's what you are. So it is a question not of attaining the self-knowledge, but simply removing everything that denies it. And you don't need to go through each individual thought individually to do that. Thank God we don't have to determine the truth or falsity of every single thought. Oh my God, that would go on forever. All we have to do is to clear out the lot of it simultaneously by going, to whom is that appearing? Is the I that says, I'm taking step forwards back, is that me? What is that referring to? Okay, that I that takes 5 steps forward and 4 steps back cannot be the self, because it doesn't do that. Therefore, that I must be referring to the false belief of a self, the personal sense of a self. It is not referring to me. It is just a thought. I'm the witness of that thought. Who am I? I am the absolute self. I've never been anything else. You do it by direct experience. It isn't even a mantra saying, I am the self, I am the self, I am the self. That won't do anything for you. It is a seeing. It's an actual experience, right? And the experience is simply closely examining what's actually happening, right? Without the mind coloring it, telling you what, oh, this is what's happening. See, this is it. You're taking these steps. You're not getting anywhere. It's like, wait a minute, that's not what's happening at all. I am aware of all of what is being said and what I'm actually experiencing. And what am I actually experiencing? Well, I'm actually experiencing, this, and these thoughts arise, and these feelings are arising within me, and there's this clarity, and then suddenly it gets cloudy. So stand back. Who experiences the clarity? Who experiences the confusion? Are then both not being witnessed from the same place. So can that place ever be confused? And now, boom, the whole thing starts to just completely fall apart, and you're left with what you've always been, the pure awareness of everything. Does that help? Spiritual growth. Oh, right. Does that help you? Inner aesthetics. Yeah. Mary says, hey GP, help me with your great answer. Ah, so we have never been veiled. Right. It's just the belief I've been veiled. Really, that's it, folks. That's all there is to it. You, God can't, the eyes of infinite awareness cannot be veiled, can they? So there's just this thought. I've been veiled, and it creates an image of somebody who's been veiled. And the entire thing is being seen by the unveiled awareness. Yeah. Fun stuff, huh? Ivan, oh, your message is so clear. It's really like watching through crystal. It's like me talking to me. Yes. Yes. Happy Gilmore, who just donated $1.99 or £1 99 pence, I guess you'd say. Who is it who awakens? You. Awakening from the dream of you. Use your name, Happy, right? Right. Happy, right? Which actually that movie, I don't know if that's really your name, but that's okay. Um, you awaken from the dream of Happy. Happy does not awaken, right? The guy in the dream does not wake up, right? The one dreaming wakes up. So who wakes up? Well, the only thing that can wake up is consciousness, right? I mean, the object of consciousness, which is not conscious, cannot awaken, right? A thought form cannot awaken. It cannot see itself. It cannot know itself. Cannot think itself. So the only thing that can awaken is consciousness, which you've always been. And the awakening is seeing you've never been asleep. That the entire play of something who has been asleep and needs to awaken has been appearing on the screen of the infinitely permanent awakened. Awakeness awakens to itself, experiencing itself as awakening. I know it seems really just, you cannot be put to sleep. It can't happen. Only the belief. You can only dream that you are somebody sleeping. You can't actually be that. Awareness can never become not awareness. Can't do it. So you're awakening from the dream of GP, of Happy, of Mary, of whatever. When will awakening happen? Is it down to grace? Says Happy. Yes, always. And it's happening right now. You're in the middle of it. You're experiencing of it. The very fact that we're talking about it is it, right? Just don't think of yourself as somebody who is awakening. Drop the idea that you're somebody who is asleep and start looking deeply at the nature of consciousness, which is your own nature, your experience of being. Are you not hearing my words right now? Is that cognizance ever not been there? Right? Whether it be thoughts you're hearing, or emotions you're feeling, or sensations you're sensing, or memories, anything going on, something is there to cognize them. That's consciousness. And it's never not cognized them. Consciousness is simply identified with one of the images appearing to it. Now there's this picture of this person who's asleep, right? And has to awaken, right? But that's not real. There's no such person. There's no such thing as the sleep. And that the truth of that is grace. It isn't like grace interjects into the asleep one, gives them a good shake, and wakes them up. Grace is the truth that you've never been asleep. That's what's piercing the veil, even as we speak. That is in every word I'm speaking. And it's what you're hearing and what you're feeling. Mary says, my friend is having trouble with OCD. Yes, I understand. I've had some close friends that have struggled with that. I do believe, well, first off, there are some practical things that can be done. Things like self-hypnosis, EFT, uh, are very practical things that people can do to help calm the body, which will help with the OCD. And the OCD is uh, uh, just kind of the ingraining of this ritual with this intense fear that if I don't do it, something terrible is going to happen. You could experiment by not doing it and see if something terrible actually happens. Probably have to get support in order to do that. The other is this approach of simply looking at every single thought and and bringing the attention to the one who is aware of the thought. Not just the thought, but the feeling in the body. Because that's it. The feeling is there, which is triggering these thoughts, because the thoughts are all, how do I get this feeling to go away? And the feeling is one of being threatened, of being in danger. It probably goes back to early childhood and trauma, maybe into past lives. But to be fully present with it consciously is the ultimate medicine for it. That isn't to to deny the use of the others, the ones I've recommended. They're very, very powerful. I still use EFT with people because it's a very powerful way of doing it, and not everybody's ready for this kind of a conversation, right? So I don't try to push it on, nor do I present this as if it is fundamentally therapeutic, because it isn't. It's fundamentally existential. The therapeutic aspect of it just kind of happens. It kind of comes with the territory. So uh, very much this can help, but many different things can help as well. And I really urge your friend to seek some out. I do EFT sessions still with people, plus my students do, and there are many really good EFT practitioners out there, as I have several friends that are hypnotherapists. One in particular who's really specialized in anxiety, and I can hook you guys up. He's down in Las Vegas. So hopefully that will help you and your friend out, Mary. But give her all my love and tell her it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with her, right? It's just the nervous system has gotten stuck in a pattern. That's it. It's not a personal problem. It's not a personal flaw. It's nothing to be ashamed about. That this is, this shit happens, right? Stuff happens to us as kids. It gets ingrained into the nervous system. God knows I had plenty of them because it was such a rotten childhood. And stuff carried around for decades, right? So please, there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. There is a solution. You are very loved. How am I doing here? Okay. Mary Sykes says, I get indoctrination via the fundamentalist teachers, GP, so I'm admitting my own fear of letting all this go. It has been believed by me since childhood. Thank you for your truth-telling about all that I have suffered because of this. Yes, you have, because it's a horrible offense against humanity. It brings out the absolute worst in the people who should be representing the highest. And such a delusion that they can call this horrific threat. Either believe this or you're going to rot permanently in hell, be tormented forever, and God loves you. It's like, what? Are you out of your mind? And I love you, right? That's why I'm telling you this. I love you because I don't want you to. Right? It's like, oh my God, it's madness. The entire thing is madness. A friend of mine, Ryan, I actually have had several people come to my meetup groups who had managed to escape from cults. And these fundamentalist churches, I don't care if they have 10 million viewers on cable TV. They are cults, right? And there's a very famous picture that he put it on Facebook. It's a very famous picture of Christ knocking on this door, and it's Christ knocking on the door of the human heart, wanting you to open it and let him in. But somebody added some cartoons to it. And knock on the door, and the voice inside says, "Yeah, who is it?" He says, "It's it's Jesus, the Lord." He says, "Yeah, what do you want?" He says, "What do you want?" He says, "Let me in. I." He said, "Well, what for?" He says, "So I can save you." And the man says, "Well, save me from what?" And Jesus says, "From what I'm going to do to you if you don't open the door." Now, that's it. That's fundamentalism in a nutshell. It's beautiful. Right. And yes, these things, if you were raised in a fundamentalist church like that, or any of them that became cultish, um, that was drilled into you emotionally. The fear of not thinking that way, of not believing that, was rooted into the nervous system. The good news is, with patience with yourself, withdrawing into that question, to whom is this appearing, both the feeling and the thoughts, that the potency of that conditioning will diminish. Remember, it is just conditioning. It's not true. It feels true, but it isn't true. And uh, to recognize it, that it is conditioning and not you, is the key to becoming free from it. Right? And just looking at it reasonably, looking at the origins of it, the fundamental religion, this idea of heaven and hell and eternal punishment if you don't believe in it, was not the original teaching of Christ. It was invented by the Roman Empire for the express purpose of controlling people in the far-flung reaches of the empire. And we inhabited it, we inherited it. It's gotten transformed. It went through the Protestant, and now it went through really a revolution. The modern fundamentalist emerged. I think it was like early 1900s. The Southern Convention for the Southern Baptist, which separated from the Northern or Reformed Baptist, and that's where this became the official dogma. And uh, scholars on the subject say that that the fundamentalist view represents as big a departure from Christianity as the Roman Catholic Church represents from the original teachings of Christ. It's that big. They 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 took guilt and ran it up to the nines. I mean, it's unfathomable, but it is the most cruel thing. There's no love in it at all. I don't care what they say. There is no love in it. There's no forgiveness in it. There's only threats. And look, I cannot love a God that threatens to punish me if I don't love them. That's a stalker, right? That's the obsessed boyfriend you can't get rid of. That's not a God. Jesus, literally, is not the teachings of Christ. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Okay. Don't get me started. All right. Elaine is reading an Arthur Osborne book based on his talks with Ramana Maharshi. Oh, wonderful. Excellent, excellent, excellent. It's interesting to be reminded that Ramana's initial near-death experience and awakening wasn't the end of the affair, but there were further awakenings, where this seems to have been more deeply understood and integrated. So the idea of enlightenment being overly romantic and exotic is a product of mind? Yes, it is. Yeah. We idealize it. We want the Hollywood version of it, right? You know, the heavens parted, the angels sang, Ramana was never the same after that. He went through, uh, he sat there for 2 years, didn't do it. I mean, he completely lost all ambition, and he almost died, at like 18 years old. He was 16 years old when he went to Tiruvannamalai, and just sat in the temples. He was finally noticed. It was finally realized that this was a young master, and they basically, he was actually stuck to the floor. He was sitting there for he was completely uh, gone from his body, but the body was still there and functioning. And yes, little by little he came back. He actually he never read the scriptures. Before he read the scripture, he became very well versed on it. Actually became a teacher. But yes, there was always an unfoldment. Enlightenment is not static. It's not, it's not a switch gets turned on. It is a flowering. It's a constant opening. This is the nature of life. This is the nature of reality, that it is constantly manifesting itself and expanding and getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And the mystery of it is that this depth is appearing from the infinite, timeless, and changeless, right? It's complete yet continuing, like a flower that never stops opening. It's the mystery. You cannot fathom it. So the mind turns awakening into an experience. Button over here on the screen. The mind turns awakening into an experience and then wants to replicate it. You follow? It turns it into something that happened to me. It wants to turn it into a personal event and sustain the separate self. Right? There is no separate self. That's the awakening. Right? So, and how that happens is Paul. Yeah. What was the first name here? Paul. Forgot what. October Paul. Yeah. As he said, he thought, well, did I miss it? Did I not get it? Because there's still this sense of suffering. No, it's got to grow, right? You got to grow out of the sense of suffering. But this is the path on how you do it. And so it's a deepening of the awakening. So don't deny the particular way it's unfolding for you. It was not a sudden moment for me. I had many, many sudden moments, but it's been this gradual unfoldment. And it's like, I don't even know what it means anymore. Really, I don't know what enlightenment is anymore. I used to think I did. And now I realize, no, it's the mystery. It is the constant unfoldment, the constant growth of that which does not grow or unfold. Do with that which you want. But yeah, don't mistake the special effects and all the Hollywood blockbuster stuff as the actual reality of awakening. You're all awake already, right? Your mind just won't accept it. It's not agreeing with it, right? So you're believing yourself. That belief that I am something that could be asleep or awake is still just active. Right? There's the deepening of it, right? There's no such person. There's no such thing. You are not asleep. You can't be. Consciousness is awakened. Always is. Otherwise, there would be absolutely no experience. If not, there'd be no existence. In order to exist, you must be awake, because consciousness and being are one. And that is the Ananda. That's happiness. To know that is happiness. So this is a different happiness. This is not the happiness of a fulfilled desire. Those are nice, but that's not this. This is the contentment that is the nature, the felt nature of consciousness. Consciousness known through mind is awakening. Known through the heart is Ananda, love, peace, contentment. And so never for one moment think that you're not there trying to get there. It's not true. The awakening is forever. It couldn't be the awakening if it wasn't. It would be temporary like everything else and could not possibly be the ultimate reality. Therefore, it is simply unfolding itself to itself, and that unfoldment is taking the form of what you call your life. You are the Buddha story. Anandnik Hill. Thank you. You're welcome. Why does it take this long for consciousness to wake up? Who said it's asleep? Happy? Yeah. Right? See, what's happening, Happy Gilmore, is that there's this picture you formed of yourself as asleep, and you've got this idea of what awakening would be. And of course, you have that idea of awakening because deep down inside, you know what it is. You remember. You feel it. But because the mind is constantly saying that you're not that, you've created a picture of it as if it's some other event out there, and 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 now you're attempting to get there. If the awakening happens in time, it cannot be the awakening. So it hasn't taken any time at all for consciousness to wake up. Step out of time and be what you always have been. This is confusing only because it is the absolutely direct path. It does not make any concession whatsoever to any kind of progressive path. It makes no concessions whatsoever, as you can tell in Satsang. Other classes, you'll hear me make concessions. I'll talk about energy healing. I'll talk about different things. I'm going to talk about the chakras and archetypes of consciousness. These are concessions. These are ways of approaching it. They're valuable, right? But this is the direct path, right? There is nothing else but this. There is no other consciousness. There is no one who is asleep. That all of those are beliefs. And if they are believed, they will be experienced as if they are true. And awakening will be this carrot at the end of the stick that you never quite get to. The stick, the carrot, the awakening, you are all being seen by whom? It's not the question, why has it took this long? A thought that appeared. Right? And of course, it has in it implied the I, for me to take this long. So there is a very subtle, almost invisible image of me that is being seen. To whom are those appearing? That's you. Right? Now, who is that? Is that one that is witnessing those thoughts, what those thoughts are referring to? Are they referring to just another image? Right? If you can see that image, well, obviously that's not me. I'm the one that's aware of that. So who am I? Without that, who am I? That's the question. And it's not the thing, it's not going to come as an answer to the mind. Oh, I'm this or that. It's the answer to that question is self-realization. That is the answer. You just know yourself as you actually are. And even if it seems like you don't know yourself as you actually are, just stay in that place. It's all you have to do. Grace will do the rest. Ann Kaufman says, everything always works out for me comes from the mind and ego versus true self. Correct. If I have a belief, what causes it to manifest? The belief is the cause of manifestation, because our beliefs always manifest themselves as experience. They always. It's just the way it works. That's the nature of consciousness. That's the nature of experience. Right? It's not like we're going to do something and then it's going to manifest. The very belief is the manifestation. The thing is the thought. Now, when you're making an affirmation, like something like everything always works out for me, if your affirmation is rooted in that sense of being, it will be true and have some power behind it. If it's rooted in the sense of a separate self, it will be false and it will be weak, because the ego wants to get to this place where everything works out for me. Who's that me? right? If the me you're referring to is the pure, unadulterated, absolute self, well, then of course everything works out for me. Everything comes from me. Everything emerges from me. I am one with everything. Everything that is me. So yes, it is now a true statement because it is that statement is rooted in the reality. But if that same statement is rooted in the sense of a separate self, it will always be weak. It will always be seeking self-interest. It will never be satisfied with what it gets, right? So the me in that statement, who are they referring to? So it's not that making an affirmation is a bad thing. That's another. It's a concession I tell people to do. Do that. To think that everything's going to work out for me is so much better than thinking nothing works out for me, right? It's clearly a step in the right direction. So let's just keep going with it. Keep taking it further. The problem with affirmations and things like that is everything is always working out for me. People hold to it rather doggedly, and there's so many other factors that can be involved. So if you really took that to heart, everything that happened, you would say, that's part of it. What's working out for me. What happens is things start showing up, but not in the way you think they should. And you start thinking, my affirmation didn't work. Yeah, it did. It's just that you are assuming that what's happening isn't because you don't like it, right? I don't like this. This is what I want to have happen. But if you're going to say that this is true, everything is always working out for me, then everything that happens in your life is that. If something bad happens to you, it's not bad. It's everything working out for me. That situation is bringing about in me a certain kind of energetic shift that is going to bring me to a higher state of being. That would be honoring your own affirmation. The problem is people make affirmations like that and they keep holding it to them until things start to look the way they want them to look, right? Well, that's not actually living the affirmation, is it? So live it. All things work out for my benefit. So really take that to heart, walk around, walk through life as if that were true, and you'll find that they are. But you'll find that they are not because everything starts going the way you want them to, but because you have a sense of absolute peace and contentment no matter how things are going. So even this affirmation can lead you to a deeper spiritual place. Thanks, Anne. Arby says, you say let the energy run through your nervous system without the assigning labels to it, then it will dissipate. Are you implying that labels are what are keeping it stuck? Yes, I am. I'm not implying it. I'm saying it. I'm saying it quite definitively. That the energy runs through our system. I mean, if you look at the whole complex of it, a feeling comes up, maybe a feeling of fear. Immediately, that triggers a conditioned response, right? The conditioned response are all habits of behavior, action, thought, and feeling, right? That were put in place sometime in the past, mostly when we were children. So something happens, we have a conditioned reaction to that, a learned response to that, right? Now that response is always some kind of action to get away from it, change it, fix it, do something to it. The problem is that conditioning oftentimes getting put in place at a time when we were quite unconscious can be totally counterproductive, right? But there's no absolute hardwired connection between what happened, whatever event that happened, and the cascading of responses that are the conditioning. So the more you get to the actual event that took place without any of the story, the thoughts, the reactions, the more pure the experience is. And that's where it has the opportunity to move through your nervous system. If it's triggering a response, you are reinforcing the the setting in which this event took place. You're literally creating the environment in which this will perpetuate itself. So if there's a feeling in the system, you can actually get so adept at this that a feeling would come up that you would say uncomfortable would not be uncomfortable. It would neither be comfortable nor comfortable. It's just a sensation, because even the word comfortable and uncomfortable is a word that has been applied to it. You have given it a meaning that no experience has. No experience has any inherent meaning. None. Any feeling you have in your body comes up, and it can either be there's a sensation there. It's like, oh my God, I hate that. That's terrible. Why am I feeling this? Am I still feeling this? I don't want to feel this anymore. Now, none of that has anything to do with the sensation you're feeling, does it? It is all an arbitrary set of reactive patterns set up a long time ago. Move back through all of that. Don't react. Don't suppress. Sit in the middle. You'll feel the full of it. You'll feel that impulse to want to get away from it. If you don't, if you are just present with it as it is, it can't help but dissipate, because the conditioning is what sustains it. Without the conditioning, without the labeling, without all of that, it cannot stand on its own. It has no energy of its own. Only your reaction. You give it energy. Don't give it energy, it's got to just inevitably. Mary said, you hit fundamental teachings right on the head, and yes, my nervous system is on high alert. Yes. I only learned through fear and not love. Yes. And I love your rant on those religious teachings and the false god that they were teaching. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, my rant. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Chris Hedges, who's a political writer that I highly admire, refers to them as Christian heretics. Period. End of story. They do not represent Christianity. Love it. John Sheehan, hi GP, greetings from Ireland. My separate self has become very active since I peaked at the real self. Hello, are you in there? Feelings of anxiety. Any advice, please? Love this chat. Yes. Um, hold to whatever image you had at that peak. Don't try to reproduce it, but notice that you knew it was true. Something inside of you. Come to that, right? And so now feelings of anxiety arise. Yep. Welcome to the real world of awakening, right? Awakening is not a discount coupon, right, to get out of all of the conditioned responses and all the stuff that is accumulated over the years. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's the environment in which you can become free of all of that. So anxiety comes up, notice it, see it. Notice that the anxiety will want you to go into a particular direction. It's going to want you to act in some way, think in some way. You'll watch it spin, right? And then come back to the place and notice, to whom is all of this appearing? The spin, the thoughts, the feeling, the anxiety, all of it, right? This is to come into your true place. This is the place you glimpsed. This is the place you took a peek at. It's right there. It's what's hearing my words right now. It's what recognizes the anxiety when it comes to anxiety. Cannot come up to itself. It cannot come up to that which is unconscious. It has to appear to consciousness, right? Now, at the same time the anxiety appears, a set of thoughts appear that says, I am anxious, I am afraid, I have a problem, I need to get rid of this. Now, are not all of those thoughts being seen by exactly the same consciousness that is aware of the anxiety? Now, is those thoughts, I am anxious, is that I referring to this, or is it referring to an image of someone who is afraid? The image of someone afraid, this image of someone not afraid. The feeling of anxiety when it's there, The feeling of calmness when it isn't there, are they not being beheld by exactly the same consciousness? Therefore, the I that it is referring to is not that. It is not you. It is reactive pattern in your nervous system, and you are the consciousness that is behind it. Now ask the question, who am I? Who is this consciousness? It's not that. That is the power by which all of the unhandled material that is running around in the nervous system is expunged, and the true self begins to colonize the entire system. And I'm speeding up a little bit here because I've run out of time. David Elaine, thanks GP. The ordinary is what is so extraordinary about awakening and the knowing of oneness of its own being. Yeah, that's it. Cobra Paul, I left the cult of the Jehovah's Witness, says. It was so hard to leave, and I lost all my friends one day. Thank you for creating a beautiful, safe space to ask questions. You're so welcome. It's amazing. Probably over the last 6 months, just all sorts of people I've found have come into this teaching from that, and I'm so overjoyed to see that the grip of these cults is beginning to break. The hold they're holding over people is falling apart. The absurdity of the position is, and the inhumanity of the position is being seen just increasingly clearly. Anne says, a positive expectation versus looking at what fear. Yes, a big yes. Very good. Yes, Anne, that's it. Ava, thank you for great satsang. By the way, beautiful mandalas you have. They attract my eyes very strongly. Oh, yeah. Isn't that great? I really enjoy. I actually have 2 more I think I'm going to put up here, but I didn't have time to get them today. It's all just for the background. Really, it's the background for satsang. That's why I got them in the shelves and everything. I was actually going to have the shelves lower, right, so I could see more on them. But I kept hitting my head on them, so they had to go up higher. Good thing I'm not, 6'3" or something. Let's see. Murray Sykes, GP, I've been sharing my EFT package they got from you by donation, but I'm having problems opening some up because my iPad, I know. Would like to connect after this, talk about it. Yeah, that's the problem with zip files. iPhones, iPads, they have to be downloaded to computer, unzipped, and then synced with your with that. I may have some other ways of doing it. It's okay. You can bring it up here. Oh, David Rose says, I read Chris Hedges' articles every week in TruthDig. Yeah, he's brilliant. And what a heart. What a heart. He just did a video about compassion, which from somebody who's a real hard-ass political reporter. But he teaches in the prisons. He is just a real human being. Mary Sykes, Cobra Paul, God bless you for leaving that organization. David Rose says, one of the best journalists we have, in my opinion. You're absolutely right. I totally agree. Mary Sykes, my whole system goes into a contracted state, and I don't recall any thoughts that stirred this up. Well, again, notice. See, my whole system goes into a contracted state, and I do not recall any thoughts. Now, I'm taking this apart. Right? Notice that there's an assumption about who the I is. Right? I do not recall these thoughts. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your attention off of the contracted state. It's there. No need to deny it. And the not being able to recall thoughts and stuff like that. Right? And say, okay, to whom are those appearing? Well, to me. Right? Now, who's the I? Right? This is the answer to every question. Who is the I that is actually having the experience? And you'll find that the I in the experience is not the I that's having the experience. It is always consciousness. And these are beliefs. They're beliefs about ourselves. They're beliefs about who we think we are. They're not actually who you are. And thank you. Yeah, we're running out of time here. I've got to. It's time for me to go on now, but let me just kind of finish on that note, because I've been saying it over and over again, and it's just becoming clearer and clear to me that this is where my message needs to focus itself. You are already the self. Right? If you weren't, you couldn't become it. Right? You have to realize that it's simple, reasonable logic. If you're not it, you cannot become it. Right? You cannot be anything other than what you are. Right? If you're not the self, you can't become the self. If you're not the awakened one, the Buddha, you cannot become the Buddha. Right? Because what we're talking about with the Buddha, the awakened one, the I am, is the eternal reality. And so it can't start and stop. It can't come and go. If it does come and go, it can't be it. And what we're talking about is the truth. The truth cannot change into an untruth. So the truth has to be eternal, has to be unchanging and eternal. But it's not an abstraction. It's not a concept out there somewhere. It's the truth of you. So the truth of you has always been eternal, which means you have always been eternal. Because the truth of you couldn't be, well, he is here now and now he's gone. Because truth is not something that comes and goes. So the truth of you has always been the truth of you. You are the awakened one. This is all we are doing is clearing away all the beliefs that we're not, and the subtle images that we hold of ourselves as being somebody striving to wake up rather than being the awakening. This is the great revelation. This is what Christ saw. This is what Buddha saw. This is what Ramana saw. This is everyone who's ever gotten, who's ever seen this, has realized that I never was that. The I have been referring to has always been this image in the mind. And I have always been the consciousness aware of the image, the mind, the world, all of it. I am Shiva. I am Brahma. I am Vishnu. I am that one. That's who you are. So, till next week, folks. gpwalsh.com/chakras-free. That's the free. And I also hope you'll join me on the 10-week intensive. It is not strictly non-dual, but believe me, there'll be plenty there. I work up to it into what I call the 8th chakra, which is the light at the center, which is because all of the chakras are actually aspects of consciousness. You have to eventually talk about consciousness in its wholeness. And we can run it through the prism of the mind and look at different aspects of consciousness, but eventually you take away the prism and you go, well, what is it? Well, it's you. Nothing but you. So I hope you'll join me. Until then, namaste.